Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm surrounded by very big cameras, but I'm going to be talking about a very small camera which is in this case. Let's get into it. Whilst I love large cameras for the quality of their results, sometimes just carrying something even the size of a SLR is a bit inconvenient, and that's why I absolutely adore my little Barnack Leica, especially when fitted with a tiny collapsible lens. This is quite pocketable if you have reasonably large pockets. If you don't have reasonably large pockets, or you're carrying other stuff, or you're not really going out to take pictures, then an alternative might be this little beauty. This is an Olympus XA, and like the Barnack Leica, it's a rangefinder camera. It's 35mm. It's only just sort of bigger than two 35mm cartridges spaced out. And it has an f2.8 Zuiko lens, 35mm. There's a lot of ballyhoo about this camera online, and I picked it up as much as anything to sort out the fact from the fiction and see whether it actually is a serious camera or it's just a plastic fantastic. And yes, the first thing you do notice about the little Olympus XA, which incidentally was produced between 1979 and 1985, which makes it very much a product of the long good time party decade. And this no doubt was in the pocket of a lot of clubbing 20-somethings at the time. And it's carried on to be quite a hipster delight, which is not something that I'm necessarily into, but I had to take a look at it and I had to try it out. I managed to get this copy with a nice case and a fully working little A11 flash. Now that's a dedicated flash for this camera, because this camera hasn't got any hot shoe connections or PC connections or anything like that, but I don't see that as a downside. My Leica hasn't. I know it's got those, but I wouldn't trust them. This kind of camera is not something you really want to use with flash. It's got an f2.8 lens, so it's quite capable of being cooled by available light. You have the aperture set on this slider on the right. You have the film speed set with a little bit of a fiddly little tab down here, and the focus is done with this lever. It's a true rangefinder camera, and the rangefinder patch is of course in the viewfinder window, but it's quite dim and you have to be really online with it, and it's quite difficult if the subject is quite complicated, branches or that sort of thing. It's actually quite difficult to focus. But then again, it's a 35mm lens and it's got a huge depth of field, so focus isn't necessarily too difficult because you can set it on a fairly small aperture and just let depth of field take care of things. Set it to a reasonable hyperfocal distance. It's actually hyperfocal distance marked for f8, I think. Oh no, f5.6 is marked in orange on here. So you can actually just set it to that and use it as a complete point and shoot camera. It's incredibly light. It is, as I say, plasticky, and a bone of contention for a lot of people is the shutter release, which is lacking in any form of feel. Doesn't have a particularly satisfying sound and is very easy to trigger by accident. The nicest thing about this little beast is that it is a proper aperture priority automatic, which has a 1.5 stop backlight override actuated by this little lever underneath, which also does battery check, which is an unpleasant noise, and self-timer. So it can be used like any aperture priority SLR. You can also, of course, take more control over the shutter speed by using the ISO dial creatively. It's a very, very versatile little camera. You can't get away from the fact that it does feel a little bit cheap in the hand. But the quality of the results that you can get with this, well, they surprise me hugely. I took the camera to Coalhouse Fort, one of my common camera test areas, and put it through its paces, and here are the results. Well, I have to say I was very, very impressed with the results from this little camera. Okay, things didn't go completely without issues. The focusing is difficult. I'm getting used to it, but it's not complete plain sailing. The rest of the handling of it, apart from it's a little difficult sometimes to get over the top of the shutter release whilst you've got it in your eye. I mean, I haven't got particularly big hands, but if you did, I think you'd be in all kinds of trouble trying to adjust it. But it performs way above what I would have expected from something like this. I think the problem is that it's seen online as a point-and-shoot camera, and it definitely isn't a point-and-shoot camera. It would frustrate people who want a point-and-shoot camera. And some of the reviews that I've seen that are critical of it, and some of the comments that are critical of it, really come from people that would prefer something that was autofocus and auto exposure. And if that's what you want, this isn't for you. It really isn't for you. This is more of a serious photo tool like my Barnack Leica. True, it hasn't got interchangeable lenses, but for street work and something to keep as a little notebook in your pocket, it's a very, very cool little piece of kit. I will say that it's not worth spending a fortune. These things did go up to £150, that sort of price, $150 nearly now. But yeah, I think 80 to 90 pounds will be the most I would pay for one of these. But having said that, this one will be staying in my pocket when I'm not taking the Leica with me. Probably loaded with, as I exposed in the pictures there, Delta 400, and it's a great little notebook camera. So, if you've enjoyed the content of this episode, why don't you hit the like button? And if you'd like to see some more, then think about subscribing, because it puts a great big cheesy grin on my face, and it does wonders for the channel. I've got some more content coming out soon that will no doubt please some of you who take movies on analog movie cameras, because I've picked up this beast and we'll be doing some work with that. So, until I see you again, keep taking pictures.